One of the questions I get asked all the time is, how accurate is a Flightscope or a launch monitor versus one of these top tracers? Now, you may have seen these down at a range that you use, and they are fast becoming one of the biggest things that people are practicing on down at the golf range. And today we're going to test how accurate they are. So we're using this £10,000 launch monitor versus the top tracer. We're going to have a little bit of a warm up, and then we're going to do a bit of a test to see how accurate they really are. We're doing it based on the carry distance. One thing to note, depending on the range that you're on, they actually have an adjustment for flat carry. So that is the number that we're going to be looking at. 5 balls with a wedge, 5 balls with a 7-iron, and 5 balls with a driver to see if this top tracer stacks up against the £10,000 machine. Let's have a look at it. So a little bit about Top Tracer before we get into the test. It's a virtual screen where you're looking at playing virtual golf basically. It works on cameras that look like security cameras that are up above the range, and it tracks the ball. So as soon as you hit it from your bay, you've already indicated which bay you're on with the camera. It follows your golf ball till it lands. So therefore it should be pretty accurate on those carry distances. It's got a ruck of games here. On the actual monitor version, you get 8 different games here. You've got stuff like warm up, my practice, which is what we're going to be using for this test today, where it actually keeps all your data. Virtual golf, closest to pins, longest drives, just loads of stuff that goes on there. So that's the Top Tracer. The Flightscope, on the other hand, is a little bit more intricate. This thing tracks everything from your ball speed, your club head speed, your angle of attack, the spin rate on the golf ball in terms of side spin, the vertical launch of the golf ball. This has everything. So theoretically, this should be the one that gives us more accurate readings. Now, what I'm also going to do just before we start is I'm going to zap a few targets out on the range with my rangefinder, just so we know we've got a yardage marker for where these balls are actually landing, so we can judge these two against them. So we've got some yardage markers out on the range, and I'm just going to zap them. I've got a 100 marker, a 150, a 200 and 250. I can judge them where the ball lands and see what the monitors are saying to see how accurate those are. 100 with the slope is 95. 150 with the slope is 145. 200 with the slope is 198. And then the 250 with the slope is 254. So now I know, once I've hit those balls, roughly how far they should be going, judged on the eyeball and of the distance. So we're going to load up my practice. This is basically your personal caddy on the Top Tracer. You put all your clubs in before, it then collects all your data and sends it back to your phone. So if you want to get your yard averages, it's really, really good for that. So we're going to be using a wedge, a 7-iron and a driver for this test to see those flat carry numbers, see how accurate they are versus the Flightscope. So we'll go over to irons, get my wedge up. We're going to hit 5 balls with each. Let's go. Not my best start, little bit of a scrappy one after that warm up, but early numbers. Carry, 114. 114 on the Flightscope, 114 on the Top Tracer. Good signs. Let's rack through these pitching wedges. Okay, so 5 wedges in. Let's take a quick look at those numbers. They were pretty tight, to be fair. Shot 1 bob on. Shot 2 1 yard away with the top tracer and the Flightscope. Then shot 2 was only 2 yards away between those, so again, very, very close. Shot 3 was pretty much there as well. Shot 4 was the interesting one. That was a real outlier, and looking at where it landed from the number I was at with my rangefinder, I would say that the Flightscope seemed like the more realistic yardage. That was 134 versus 126, so there's that little bit of discrepancy there in that one. Shot 5 was actually pretty close again. That was only 2 yards away, so at the moment with a wedge, without that one outlier, we're only seeing 1 to 2 yards difference, which it's not enough of being a full club. It's maybe half a club's difference, but it's not a massive difference. I'm maybe expecting from this start that when we move up from 7-iron and then driver, we start to see big differences. Let's hit some more. So we're gonna go 7-iron now, 5 shots, let's see what we get. What I like about this test is it's actually taking human error into account, because I don't think I've found the middle yet, which is always great. Okay, so that's the 7-iron done, and I'm actually quite surprised by those results. The average on the Flightscope for the carry is 172.8 yards. The average on the top tracer is 173 yards. The ball speed 121.5 on the Flightscope, 121 on top tracer. And the launch angle here is 16.4 degrees. That's the ball launch angle on Flightscope. Top tracer, 17 degrees, so remarkably close there. There's no real big outliers in that batch there. I would say that I hit those better than I did the wedge, so whether that's got something to do with those first initial ones being a little bit out, but let's see when we get into the driver, are we going to see a big change in all these numbers. It's a little bit interesting, that one. Let's hit another one and see what it comes out with. 257 carry on the Flightscope, 273 on top tracer. Last drive, let's give it a go. Okay, so the averages of the driver, really interesting results here. Actually found that they're only 2 yards apart, the averages. So we've got 263.7, well it's actually 1.3 yards. 263.7 for the Flightscope, 265 for the top tracer. Now when we look at them individually, we'll notice that the top tracer's first 3 were a little bit longer, averaging around about 7 or 8 yards longer. And then all of a sudden, top tracer jumped up through a longer one, Flightscope jumped up through a longer one in, and then the longer one on Flightscope again for the last ball. So we've got the same averages, but come to them slightly differently. Flightscope will predict a flight towards the end of it if it's not quite getting it. So with it being that it's a little early in the morning and the rain's a little bit drizzly here, it might miss a little bit of it. But what I'm seeing generally throughout the whole test, the averages are so close, 2 yards pretty much for every average there. So is top tracer as accurate as a Flightscope? I would say yes. I'm seeing that there my averages are 2 yards apart. If I were to rely on these and then take my numbers to the golf course, I don't think I would see major differences. I wouldn't say, for instance, seeing a 7-iron, if it's saying 165 here, out on the course goes 150. So I definitely think you can rely on the top tracer to get your average yardages. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video this week. If you have, do give it a like for me. Also remember to subscribe to the channel as well. Try and get on a top tracer. See if you think they are just as accurate as I found they were today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video very soon.